In just 2 days, Donald Trump Jr., magically, he got 200,000 new followers. That is roughly 2,000% increase daily. Wow. It's almost as if Twitter employees lifted a broad anti-conservative, anti-Trump shadow ban, which we all knew was taking place anyway, in an effort to cover their tracks before the new boss takes over. Now, Twitter claims that there's nothing nefarious at play here, but they've said that all before.
Yes, they have said that before, and we're gonna actually show you the evidence for why they said that before. But we need to jump into this because Sean Hannity is doing there what several Republicans, including Don Jr., have been doing throughout this week. So Elon Musk buys Twitter, implying that if this actually goes through, and there's no reason to assume that it will, because Elon Musk is one of the biggest, most prolific liars in the country, that it is going to become a right-wing hellhole. And so right-wingers, plausibly and presumably, are now signing up for it. They've been told this is now a place that's gonna be for you, but Sean Hannity, Don Jr., and others have to imply, well, no, it couldn't possibly be that new people are signing up and they happen to be right-wingers. This has to be the result of Twitter finally getting rid of their shadow ban that has never been demonstrated. In fact, we'll show you the evidence that goes in the opposite direction. And that is what? Instantly producing new followers for them. There's no argument being made here except an argument about how they think about the world. They will never accept that Twitter was not biased against them. They have to believe that because it is incredibly popular for them to present themselves as victims. They want to believe that they are simultaneously always right, always powerful, always strong, and always victimized by literally everyone. And so they are projecting their fears that if Elon Musk does take over, he's not gonna be able to demonstrate any sort of shadow banning because it doesn't exist. So what they're doing is having their cake before it's even been made. He isn't even in control, and they already get to imply that no matter what happens, the fact that new people have come on is proof that the shadow banning existed. So if Elon does take over, and if no evidence of shadow banning is ever presented, they've already gotten everything out of this that they want to, Anna, and it is utterly pathetic.
I thought shadow banning meant that you still have an account, but your tweets just don't show up in people's feeds. So
I have no idea. It means whatever it needs to at any given moment, Anna.
Listen, this is such a bubble because normal people, the vast majority of people who live in this country and live in this world aren't even active on Twitter. So I just these conversations about shadow bans and follower counts and whatever, it doesn't resonate with normal people, okay? Normal people don't care. I barely even care. So when the announcement was made this week, a bunch of people on the left, prominent leftists, they lost a bunch of followers, right? People on the broader left, Democrats like Obama, for instance, lost 300,000 followers, which seems excessive, right? It makes me question what's really going on. But my point is, at the end of the day, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares?
I understand that.
Yeah,
but I do think that this is because we have at least one troll in there that's who's like, oh, is that why lefties lost people? No, but hold on, you're not even making an argument. So you believe that Twitter got rid of a shadow ban that again was about the algorithm. It was never about followers up until literally this week anyway. Right. That magically produced new followers for the right, and somehow what? Because the shadow ban is gone, leftists stopped following people that they followed previously. You don't even understand what argument you're making. Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is Twitter is now perceived by a lot of Americans as a right-wing thing. It's not even reasonable to assume that because Elon Musk does not control it yet. But if that perception is out there, it is plausible that some right-wingers who had been avoiding Twitter have now signed up. It's also, by the way, been in the news a ton for the last week. That could generate new attention. And some centrists and lefties now think, well, if this is gonna be a right-wing place, peace out, I'm gone. And they might well come back, but they easily could have left for at least a period. That is objectively the simplest explanation, but that doesn't feed into their victim complex. So they have to believe that shadowy employees at Twitter had been secretly making it so that none of the right wingers had any following, even though many do quite well on Twitter and on Facebook. This has been true for literally years. They have to ignore all of that because again, they have to have that dichotomy where they're the best, the most popular, everyone agrees with them, everyone loves them, and also we've been so like hampered. We've been so tied down in every way. We're the big victims. They have to have it both ways because all of politics is about emotions. It's about making them feel better about themselves.
Oh, I mean, look, the right wing engages in the oppression Olympics better than any other group, including people who are actually oppressed, the very people that they fight to oppress, the very people who apparently don't have their free speech rights at all, valued or defended by the right wing. People like the transgender community who aren't even able to identify the way that they actually identify as people. But just putting that all aside, I just look at the right wing and it's a nonstop whine fest. And if they could just understand how much power they have, and look, to be frank, they do understand the power they have. It's not a surprise that Ben Shapiro is on the top 10 Facebook trending list multiple times on any given day.
Despite the shadow ban.
Right, it's just, and in terms of the infrastructure on the left versus the infrastructure on the right, the left wing doesn't have massive donors that just pour money into media companies. They might have investors, and investors invest expecting a return on their investment. It's very different from what you see on the right wing, where you have all of these wealthy donors who just shell out the cash, not as an investment, but essentially as a grant to do whatever you please with it, as long as you're carrying out the right-wing propaganda.
Exactly, because it is literally an investment. All of this, despite the fact that 99% of the content the right wing produces has explicitly, purposefully nothing to do with economics, it is designed to produce a political system that delivers economic gains for the rich and for corporations. It is literally an investment in that. And by the way, the fact that, like, again, you can show them like time after time after time, the top 10 trending things on Facebook, 7 or 8 of them will be Republicans. And that shouldn't be surprising. Mark Zuckerberg ain't a leftist. We know that they've continually tried to court right wingers to use their service. Really fast, this was originally what the article was this block was gonna be about. But Twitter has already demonstrated that the bias has produced outsized gains for right wingers, and not just in the United States. If we jump ahead to this chart, you can see that across many different countries, there is an amplifying effect in the algorithm for right wingers. It's a little bit, you can see that it's, 10, 20% positive for the right in the US and actually negative for Democrats in the US. But that's a relatively small effect compared to in some countries like Spain, Canada, and Germany. In some countries, by the way, like in Japan, all political content seems to be spread less readily. So the actual evidence shows, and this is not, hey, here's a piece of code in the algorithm that you can extrapolate. No, this is literally what happened with the tweets. No right winger will dispute this because they don't care about the actual evidence. They care about their victim complex. But there's another reason why right wing stuff tends to do well on places like Facebook, because it ain't about politics fundamentally. It is designed to be easily digestible stuff that plays into the most base primal negative emotions that people have. It produces an easy sugar high of feeling morally and genetically superior to everyone else in the world. It is implicitly made to stimulate feelings of superiority, anger, suspicion, all of that. So people spread it, they share it because they like that stuff. That's why it does well. Ben Shapiro is not going viral on Facebook for articles about the top marginal tax rate, okay? They're not interested in that. They're not covering what's going on. There's no foreign policy news or anything like that. It's all, here's a gay teacher from Indiana. Don't you feel like, aren't you worried about him possibly taking your kids from you or something? That's all they do. And so it's no wonder that it spreads. A lot of people are really small-minded and hateful, and they gobble that stuff up.
Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. I also think that there's one thing that the right wing has that the left wing does not have, and that's a unified message. And they know how to stay on message. I think they also know how to exploit algorithms and SEO to ensure that their message is amplified as much as possible. On the left, I just think it's completely different, where there's just this weird infighting that we can't shake, constant suspicion of one another, constant like taking jabs at one another. And that ends up hurting the possibility of effectively mitigating the damage that's being done by this unified right wing and unified and well-funded right wing messaging.
Yeah, you're totally right. We're gonna move in 1 second, but I just have to say one other thing. The unity of message that you say, like I continually try to stress, people think, oh, well, on the on the left, and I'm talking broadly, not literally on the left, but everything that's not hard right, you have like independent channels like TYT and stuff like that. You have like CNN, you have MSNBC and stuff. Well, on the right, they have like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire and Fox News. Same thing. There's diversity. No, there's not. No, there's not. MSNBC hates our guts. They despise us. They want us to fail. They don't want us to ever have any power. There is an actual disagreement. Do you ever question why it is that Fox News constantly puts the independent right wingers on their air? Because it ain't independent and it ain't different. It's the same thing. And now your follow-up might be, well, no, that can't be true. They disagree sometimes about candidates. One might like Josh Mandel. One might like JD Vance. Yeah, and me and my buds might disagree about who should play Wolverine. That ain't about whether the movie's gonna make money in the end. That's all surface level stuff. Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, all of them, whether they identify as establishment or as populist, they all want the exact same outcome, and the outcome is economic dominance. That's what it is. All the culture war stuff, that's tactics, that's strategy. They don't care about that. They're not losing sleep. They want low taxes, no regulations on business. They can all agree on that. Everything else is cosplay.
Oh, you're so right. That was it was a fantastic rant. I really appreciated that because you're right about that. And I think what's also damaging about the fact that the so-called left cable news networks or whatever, like rejecting the progressive left, is that in terms of people's perceptions of what the left is, they think of corporate Democrats. And corporate Democrats have done so much damage to their local communities, to their lives, to their families, that they genuinely think like, oh, MSNBC and CNN represent the progressive left, when it couldn't be further than the truth. In fact, there's a reason why candidates like Bernie Sanders had this cross-party appeal. And it was because he genuinely spoke to the interests and the economic anxieties that Americans do feel. Corporate Democrats aren't offering anyone anything other than, constant judgments, finger wagging, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas the right does offer something. It's awful, it's terrible, but they manage to take all of the frustration that people are feeling and they redirect it toward hating the most powerless people in society.
Yep.
And that is a dangerous cocktail that we're dealing with here. And unfortunately, the corporate Democrats are completely oblivious to it. And they just keep, heading toward that tree going like 180 miles per hour.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.